They say the most dangerous creature ever contained in the Galactic Zoo wasn't a monster, a weapon, or a god. It was a human who could think too much. They discovered the escape at dawn cycle. When the twin suns rose over the crystalline domes of the Galactic Zoo, the alarms didn't blare. No cages were broken, no guards were harmed. In Habitat 11X, where the galaxy's most lethal creatures were confined, there was only an empty chair, a cold cup of tea, and a handwritten note that said, "Thank you for the hospitality. I've learnt enough. Now let me see your universe. H. Kale, human philosopher." The zookeepers panicked, not because the human was violent, but because they didn't know how to contain a creature whose danger was purely conceptual. Dr. Kale had been captured decades earlier, taken from a remote planet called Earth, a species considered primitive but strangely unpredictable. He wasn't locked up for crimes, but for ideas. During his stay, Kale had spent every day talking to guards, to other specimens, to the sentient plants, even to the security drones whose eyes were too young to understand metaphors. At first, it seemed harmless, but then the transformations began. The reptilian warbeast stopped growling and started asking ethical questions. The telepathic swarm mind split into individuals, each wanting its own identity. The cannibal star wraith refused to eat unless it understood why hunger existed. Even the drones began hesitating before following orders. Kale infected them with philosophy. And in the Galactic Zoo, philosophy was more dangerous than any weapon. The curator reviewed recordings from the night of the escape. At 3:12 cycle, Kale sat calmly in his enclosure, speaking to the camera. "You misunderstand humans," he said. "You think our power is violence. It isn't. Humans destroy empires simply by asking the wrong questions at the wrong time." Then he smiled softly. "Sadly, you locked me in a cage. But the door was never the prison. Your assumptions were." And then the screen glitched. When it returned, the cage was open, and Kale was gone. The curator called an emergency council. Where would he go? They demanded. A trembling guard replied, "Where any philosopher would go, to find truth." By sunset cycle, reports flooded in from across the station. Kale had been seen conversing with the gravitational architects near the reactor core. 3 giant beings had abandoned their posts to follow him. He sat with prisoners, guards, politicians, anyone who would listen. Everywhere he walked, minds changed, rules bent, certainty dissolved. He didn't break the zoo, he made it question itself. At last they tracked him to the observation deck overlooking the spiral arms of the galaxy. He stood alone, hands behind his back, admiring the stars. "You fear me," he said without turning. "Not because I'm dangerous, but because I remind you that you are not free. Come quietly," the curator pleaded. Kale chuckled gently. "I already have, but the others won't." Behind him, thousands of alien beasts, soldiers, scientists, monsters gathered silently, united not by species but by thought. Kale stepped forward, toward the airlock. "The universe is too large for cages," he said, "and too small for closed minds." The door slid open.